so often the things that attract us to a partner is our vibration. And so we attract people based on the vibration that we're in. And the truth is that I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago. Melissa the human continues to evolve. And I wrote this the other day, this piece on stories around people trying to figure me out or try to figure other people out, but I barely am still trying to figure myself out. Welcome back to another solo episode on Waking Up with Melissa. If you haven't noticed, we have not recorded an episode in 4 weeks. And that is because it has taken me all of this time to integrate a lot of things that have been happening in my personal life. So I wanted to sit down and get it all out, but this is probably one of the hardest episodes that I'm tasked to record. Obviously, nobody's forcing me to, but I want to, I get to. And a big part of my brand and me sharing and showing up in this way, the two words that come to mind is clarity and transparency. And those are two words that I hold so very dearly as pillars to my life, my business. And I wanted to share with you that I drove cross country. I left Florida. It took me 4 days to get to California. I separated from my wife. I'm now living alone, and I've been here for over 20-something days. And it's taken me all this time, even though it's a short time, to really gather all of my words and figure out what am I going to share with my audience that would feel valuable to them? What can I share that would also add to the conversation around business and personal development? And so I came up with 4 things. Because even though it's been a short amount of time, I think nobody actually teaches you what it looks like to run a business, to be an entrepreneur, and to also hold the dynamics of being in a relationship or being in a committed partnership. And in my case, being married. And I've learned a thing or two, not being married once, but being married twice. And so the story that I want to share with you is really about understanding what a common vision looks like, not only in your business, not only in your personal life, but in a partnership. I think one of the things that made it super hard to figure out what I was going to record and what I wanted to share and what was too much was trying to control the narrative. And whenever we try to control the narrative, what we're really doing is actually we're trying to control how other people see us. And so when I started to notice that I was doing that, I really had to drop into my heart. I had to step back. I had to not record because I didn't want it to come from force. I didn't want it to come from a script or something that I felt I had to do. And so for the very first time in, 4+ years, we didn't record for 4 weeks. And it kind of hurt me. I felt like I was hiding a little bit. I felt like, why don't I have something to say? And I wanted to share with so much vulnerability one of the key things that I have found that was missing also in the landscape. Everybody shows you what a couple looks like when they're killing it. Everybody shows you what it looks like when you're in a dynamic where it looks like two people are rising together. But what does it look like, and who has taught us what settling looks like? And so one of the things that I wanted to bring forth was, do you have a common vision for your relationship? As entrepreneurs, we have a vision and a why for our business. And as beings, oftentimes we may have a vision and a why for ourselves. But what I realized being in a marriage, the second time for 8 years, was that I forgot to create a vision with my partner. And I don't want to say that I forgot like it was never in existence, but I think what happens is that we grow. We grow as beings, and we oftentimes forget that our relationship is a whole living, breathing entity. And so it's important that as we grow our business, we grow our personal development, and that we also grow our relationships. And so a lot of transformation happened, a lot of alchemy happened. And one of the things that I had to look at was how much I personally changed. And as I started to personally change, I started to realize that I wanted different things. And another thing that was really hard for me was I spent the whole year looking online and seeing so many different posts come up from mutual friends to other people who are also shifting out of different relationships and moving abroad and traveling and dismantling relationships. And I could still remember that feeling of scrolling and looking, feeling like, oof, why do I feel like I don't want this to be me? And I think underneath that, what was happening was all the examples that I kept seeing online was somebody killing it in business and their relationship falling apart. And so I was afraid. I was afraid that that would happen. I was afraid that I didn't want to be one of those people. And I was also married previously. So I think I subconsciously took on all of this burden to need it to work, to want it to work, to have this deep desire. And I spent an entire year working on it and trying to mold myself into the things that my partner wanted, because I also believe that that's what we're taught in relationships that are committed or when you're married, that you have to sacrifice. And I did do that. And I felt like I tried really hard. The same way I try really hard in my business too. I try hard in everything that I do. And so as I was going through some of the things that I wanted to share with you, one of the biggest reflections that I have and that I wanted to pass down and record in this podcast, one is to go off script and to allow whatever to come out and whatever needs to be healed through me sharing to happen, because that has always been the center of my brand. And the other thing was to come back to this realization of you have the why for your business, you have your personal why for yourself. Where is the why in your partnership? And how do you continue to come back to that? How do you continue to come back to feeding that? The second thing that I learned as I was moving through this time, spending time with myself, traveling, healing, going on a retreat, really spending time with myself, was coming back to this realization. And I know this may sound like old news, but it just was such a goodie to come back to communication is key. And that at a certain point, it's not about love. Even in your business, you can love something to death and it still not work out. Because us communicating with ourselves and understanding how we want to show up in our business and making sure that's in alignment is key. And to our relationship, same thing. And you see, this podcast and this episode and the stuff that I share, yes, people come because they want to hear the business strategy, but so much of the business strategy is really about how we handle ourselves. The model has always been the human before the business. When we take care of the human, when we understand ourselves better, everything else is a trickle effect from that. And so communication with your business is key. Communication with your partner is key. And what kind of communication? And really what I found was communication in the future. So often the things that attract us to a partner is our vibration. And so we attract people based on the vibration that we're in. And the truth is that I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago. Melissa the human continues to evolve. And I wrote this the other day, this piece on stories around people trying to figure me out or try to figure other people out, but I barely am still trying to figure myself out. I think humans, we pretend that we know it all and that we have it all figured out, but the truth of the matter is that we're always ever evolving. Things are always unfolding. really, truly, the way I want to live my life is completely unhinged. I want to continue to live life on purpose. And I was going to say the sad part is, but it's really not sad. It's really beautiful that we constantly keep changing our mind. And that's the whole point of life. Is that as we have desire, we tune into that desire. We see if it's in alignment with where we are in our life. We see if that's what we want for our future. And sometimes things change and we have to rearrange things. I actually was scrolling the other day and I saw somebody posted a video and it was so perfect and it just was so gut-wrenching because the person was saying, spend more time with people you have a common future with than a common past. And that really landed. That really landed because I think a lot of the things that we do to stay in a relationship has to do around time, has to do with, well, I've been with this person for this long, or even friendships, we do it. We outgrow our friendships and yet we still feel indebted or we still feel like we can't let go because of the common past that we have. I have to be honest with you, as I was sharing little by little my process of first leaving, which took 4 days of being on the road. And it honestly felt like I've never done any plant medicine, but it literally felt like I was on an ayahuasca journey. I have no idea how that might feel, but I was laughing and crying and having breakthroughs all at the same time. And sometimes I was just laughing and sometimes I was just crying. And other times I was really pulling over, questioning my own sanity. How does somebody leave and why does somebody leave when, quote unquote, nothing bad happened? And I think oftentimes, we're taught to stay in something until it gets so bad because it's easy when somebody fucks up. It's easy when somebody does something so terrible. And that becomes an excuse on why you leave. But what does it look like when two good people are just hurting each other or two good people are not right for one another? What does it look like when you're growing your business and you're growing yourself and you may have outgrown your current partnership or your current home or your current environment? Like, what does that look like? I searched and was trying to find references and examples. And I was on the internet trying to figure out, what should I do next? Has anybody else gone through this? And of course, people were. But I just saw from one moment to the next, I'm with this person and in the next moment they weren't. And I kept thinking, what was that transition like? What were you going through before? And so here is an actual episode of that, of what I was going through as I was building the business, as things were shifting. And the truth is that it didn't happen overnight. I don't think anything actually really does. The truth is that it was a slow burn. It took about a year of working and trying to figure it out until I finally realized that this no longer felt in alignment. And if this is the work that I teach people to come back to the altar of their heart, to come back to figure out what feels right and true for them, then I really needed to lead from that place too. And so I started to travel more. I started to say yes to things. I stopped rushing to go back home after running my retreats. I started to spend more time with myself. And I found myself in California a lot. I found myself hiking with friends, spending time with people, having these conversations around, what does this mean? Is this normal? Is everybody happy? Are the people who are growing their brands, who are hitting 6, 7, 8 figures, are their relationships thriving? Is it true that you can't do both, that you have to sacrifice in one area, that if you build your business, everything else is going to fall apart? I still didn't want to be that person. I still didn't want to be that couple. And so I kept trying, and I kept working at it, and I kept working on myself. Until one day I realized that I was living in a completely different life, in a completely different environment than the person I was with. And they were living also in a completely different life, in a completely different environment. And I think a lot about how many of us and how relatable this is to business. How many of us are just used to doing the things that we're doing and we just keep doing them. And that becomes a source of our unhappiness. The truth is that communication is key. And it's not about whether you love something or not. It's about whether something is in alignment with you or not. And if anybody's into astrology, I have about 4 or 5 placements in Sag. I'm a Cancer rising, Leo moon. I like to think I'm a bad bitch with a soft heart. And it's important, my freedom. And it's not just freedom to do whatever I want. Freedom to me is growing, it's expanding, it's feeling like I'm just taking life by the balls, and as much as I can, I'm taking risk. Life in the safe zone for me is just a complete death sentence. And I realized that there was a point in my life that I was just keeping it safe. I was keeping it safe, and there's this one moment that sticks out to me in my mind when I left. And it was really sad. It was really hard. The hardest part was to go. The hardest part was to pack up all of my stuff. And there was a part where we had a conversation, and I said, I just don't want to play into the smaller version of who I am. And what that meant for me in that moment was I just wanted to do things scared. And I think so many of us stay in jobs because we're afraid of who will pay us, and we're afraid of will our business take off. And I didn't want to play into that version of myself. I didn't want to play into that timeline. I wanted to take the next step and do whatever it was that I know was uniquely designed for me to be here in California. I don't know why. I'd be crazy to tell you that I just came here on pure intuition, on a pure feeling of coming here a few times and feeling like I'm supposed to be here. Have you ever felt like that? If you have, that is your intuition connecting with you, talking to you. Those are your spirit guides, source, God, universe, your first brain, your belly. A lot of people have asked me, what's there? What's happening? Nothing is there, nothing is happening, and maybe everything is there and everything is happening. The reason why I drove through 7 states through rain, thunder, lightning, and it took 4 days, was just based off of a feeling, and that is the way I live my life, and I wanted to continue to live my life like that. I think that's what makes it juicy, impactful, fun, expansive, freeing. That's freedom to me. Freedom is not the money that I make. Freedom is not things that I buy. Freedom has nothing to do with people I know or opportunity. Freedom to me is about the conversation that's happening in between my 2 ears. Freedom to me is waking up every day and feeling grateful and feeling love in my heart and feeling like I'm on purpose and doing the things that my heart is wanting. Can we have a bad moment? Sure. Can we have a bad day? Yeah. But I don't want a bad moment to turn into a bad week, to turn into a bad month, to turn into a bad year. I live this way because there have been so many points in my life where I felt that I was a slave to the system, or being at corporate jobs, or always feeling like I was doing something for someone else, even my own partners, even my own parents, even my own friends, always putting myself last. And I remember when I left my first marriage, I made a promise to myself that I was always going to follow my spirit, that I was going to be a disciple to my intuition, a devout follower, if you will, and less of a slave to my mind, less of feeling like I give a shit about what other people think about me or what they're going to say about me, because that's not freedom to me. Sagittarius, half horse, half man. Our freedom is so important. And really, freedom to me is about doing what I want, when I want, how I want it. That's freedom to me, without the perceptions of what other people are going to think. So it took this long. It took 4 weeks of me gathering my thoughts, of really deeply wanting to share with our community, because you guys have been here from the beginning. From the very beginning of just me sharing yoga and mindfulness and how it's changed my life, to my very first client, to building a program, building a mastermind, building retreats, running 22 retreats, taking BIPOC folks, queer beings on a beautiful journey around healing. But how do we heal if we can't be honest with ourselves first? So that was the second thing that I wanted to bring forth, that as I was tuning into what am I going to share, what is going to be valuable for them, it was really coming back to communication and honesty. First with ourselves. How do we do that first with ourselves so that then we can share that with people? Because when I run retreats, I see that the most healing part of the whole entire trip is when people vocalize and they share something that they've never shared, and they get other people to witness them. And in that, them sharing, and in that person viewing them, there's healing that's happening. And so there's so much healing that's happening even now, just me sharing. And there's so much healing, I know, where somebody is out there looking for validation and feeling like they want to be seen and they want to be heard in their entrepreneurial story around partnership and holding partnership and holding the partnership of their business. We're in relationship to everything. First, the biggest relationship that we have is to ourselves, and we're in relationship with our business, and we're in relationship with beings. And I've been thinking a lot about what the hell does all of this mean? And although I am monogamous and I love being in a relationship with one person to really get to know them deeply, oh my gosh, I think that's just so beautiful. I've been questioning a lot lately, like, are we supposed to just be with one person? Are we supposed to just build one business? Are we supposed to just have one desire? I haven't quite figured out all of it, but I do know that it is our duty to find our own happiness. It is our duty to continuously ask the question of, is this in alignment for me? Whatever alignment feels for you. Alignment for me means these two things have to communicate. When I say these two things, I mean my inner world and my outer world have to be saying yes to the same thing. I can't have an outer world that's in contradiction to my inner world, and I can't have an inner world that's contradicting my outer. Meaning I can't have a desire that I really want to do X, Y, and Z, and then I can't see it in my future. No, that means I have to come back into myself. These two things need to communicate, and they need to be saying yes to the same thing. I can't be living a reality that's not in alignment with how I really feel. This is what people say when they feel like a fraud, or they feel like maybe they're teaching people something that they haven't yet embodied, or that they're starting to get, or that they're starting to feel resistance towards. Alignment to me is when my outer world and my inner world are synced. Communication is key. Honesty is key. The last and third thing that I extracted from this entire experience was to lean deeper in love and moving in love, and what would love do? Because I think it's so easy to move through our triggers and what we think we should do and what we think we're owed. And one of the things that I started to think about was, what do we do when a good person hurts you and you also know that you hurt a good person? And how do we move through that? Through love, kindness, And how do we share our entire heart with the person without making them feel bad, without making ourselves feel bad? I think more and more we're starting to realize that breakups don't need to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be that something bad happened. You can shut down your business just because it's out of alignment, and you can also move and dismantle a relationship that you feel has served its purpose. I've been thinking about that a lot. What do we do when we feel two beings that are trying their best are also not able to communicate and see eye to eye, or have different ideas for the future? That was so hard. That was probably the most challenging thing, because it was so easy for me personally, I'll speak for myself, to be in my ego and to be like, F you, this is not working, or to be resentful almost, or to be mad at myself. Why can't I make this work? Is there a problem with me? Questioning that. And coming all the way full circle moment, and it took that long period of time of a year of just trying to figure it out and trying, a lot of trying, to come to this realization that sometimes things have a beginning and they also have an end. And when we have an end, there's also still a new beginning. And that no matter where we are, if we treat one another as if you were talking to yourself, how would you treat that person? And so that's how we closed that container, with a lot of respect, with a lot of love, and with a lot of deep understanding that if you really do love somebody, then oftentimes you're tasked to let them go, because love is not gripping. Love is not you have to stay. Love is not you owe me. Love is not I'm counting. Love is open, and it's always expanding. It's always changing. And that's what I extracted from me growing through that. That I just wanted to take the next steps with a lot of love, with a lot of courage, and with a lot of bravery. I don't know what's going to happen next. I've only been here 20-something days. I don't have it all figured out. I just got a couch yesterday. I remember my friends came over and I was like, oh, I don't have a couch. I can't host these people. I feel bad. And I had the best time just sitting on the floor on my carpet. And I remember the thought came in, if you can be happy with nothing, you'll continue to have everything. And that's always the lesson that I come back to. I keep coming back to stripping away. At first I lived in a tiny home that was 450 square feet. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to meditate there. I learned a lot about prosperity, abundance, how to feel and activate the soul richness from within by watering a garden, by teaching people yoga, by not having a job. I learned all of that there. Building a business there in that tiny little room, taking my calls on my bed. To then moving into a van that was 70 square feet. I learned even more about myself. I learned more about how to live with just 2 pair of shoes, sneakers, gave away and donated mainly all of my belongings. And Mother Nature became my teacher on the road. I learned even more. And ultimately, the biggest lesson that I learned was, if I'm not in right relationship with myself in all areas of my life, my business, what's happening in my home, what's happening in my partnership, then I'm not being the truest version of myself. I'm not being the holiest, whole version of myself. and I'm playing into the smaller version of me. So this is probably the most personal episode that I've recorded on a podcast that has to do with mindset and building a business. But I think, and I know all of it is being weaved together, because how can you run a business without the alignment of the human? To be in business and to feel like we're building something sustainable, we have to constantly put the human before the business. It's been so beautiful and amazing hanging out with you. Thank you for being here on this beautiful journey, recording this episode here after 4 weeks of going offline, being in California, being in a new studio, in a new life, in a new timeline. I appreciate you. If you've liked this episode, share it with a friend. We'd love to know your biggest takeaways. Until the next episode, go with peace, go with God. See you soon.